All right, I was expecting some volatility, and we are certainly getting it. Um, I'm pretty sure this is an indication that we're coming to the end of the bull market, but I still think we've got to have another run higher. Um, right now, the bond market is selling off and has been pretty viciously. That's taking a toll mostly in tech. Um, this looks like an intermediate cycle low, but as we get into the final stages of this bull market and into final stages of what I think is going to be a bubble, then cycles may not work very well. Sentiment may not work very well either. So while as of today anyway, this looks like um, a final intermediate cycle low in tech, and presumably the same thing in the S&P and the rest of the market. It's not out of the question that we could drop back down and undercut this, which would, I don't know how I would rationalize that cycle wise. It would be a very bizarre cycle count. But again, like I said, in the final stage of a bull market, especially one that I think is in a bubble, cycles may not work. So let me switch over to the McClellan oscillator. All right, so this is the NASDAQ McClellan oscillator, and very often an intermediate cycle is you'll have a divergence in the McClellan oscillator. The first leg down will get deeply oversold, which this one did, and then the second leg down, price may make a lower low, but the McClellan oscillator won't. So we could be setting up for that if we continue down hard, especially if the bonds just continue to sell off tomorrow and into next week. Then perhaps the NASDAQ drops down and makes a lower low, but I think the McClellan oscillator will not make a lower low and will diverge, and that would set up our bottom. And I think it's probably at some point here the Fed is going to cry uncle, and they're going to institute yield curve control and try and bring down the long end of the bond market, long end of rates. And I think that's the point at which everything explodes to the upside, and we probably get our last leg up in the bull market and in our bubble top, and then I think that could last for. I'm kind of thinking maybe into July, maybe into August, because most crashes occur more often than not anyway in the fall. So I think we could see a crash in September. And maybe even as late as October. So, assuming that we do get through this volatility here, and then it does give us another leg up. Then I think the bull market's running on borrowed time, and at that point, that's when you have to control greed. When it looks most like the Fed has got everything under control and that the sky's the limit, that's when you have to start controlling greed and decide when you've made enough and that you want to get out of the way so you don't get caught in the crash. And I do think we're going to have a crash. Let me put the long-term chart up here and I'll show you why. All right, so when we broke out of this kind of channel that we had been in here, as the Fed started doing, insane amount of QE, and we slingshotted out of that March bottom last year. This was the slingshot that sets up the bubble. I mean, this looks like a bubble to me, but I think a true bubble is going to get more stretched to the upside once we get through this volatility. If the Fed jumps into the bond market and everybody thinks the risk is gone and that it's safe to get back in, then I think it's completely realistic for this to run to even as high as 20,000, and then we get a crash like maybe we have never seen before, maybe even worse than the 2000 tech bubble crash. But right now we're in that volatility phase that I warned everybody we were going to have at least one of them. Maybe we'll have two, but we're clearly in the first one. I think we've got to get through it. Probably the Fed has to start intervening in the bond market. Once they do, then I think we take off to the upside and we probably finish this bubble and really, really stretch price far above these long-term 200-week moving average, and then that sets up the crash that always follows a bubble.